We didn't talk policy a single time
Wait,
in
are
our
you gonna
conversation.
wait?
You
I don't
realize
want to
that,
be
right?
responsible for you getting
I'm not
banned.
banned. I'm muted. We didn't talk policy a single time. We didn't
Okay.
go any over the different types of universal healthcare proposals. We didn't address anything related to the Green New Deal.
Wait, but
we
I'm
haven't talked
happy
anything
to.
related to
I'm
yeah,
happy
sure.
to talk about those things. If you had brought
Well,
the
wait, wait.
conversation in that direction, then I would have been happy to.
No, I didn't bring the conversation in that direction because you wanted to talk theoretical socialist utopia.
No,
Do you think that I-
wait, please. I literally never did that. I have never
Then why did we talk
on
about
stream.
it?
I've never on stream. This is why I feel as though your ability to talk about this is compromised. I was
Okay,
in
wait,
person with
can
you.
give
I
me an
never
example?
talked about a theoretical socialist
listen,
utopia.
I talk about policy all the time. Why would you say I have no proposed solutions to anything?
I said
What are your
specifically to the big issues we were talking about prior to
Which
the clip
big
that you
issues?
saw. Global warming was the main one. Also, the manufacturing consent issue. I don't think those are things you can.
So the manufacturing consent issue is debatable. Okay, I don't remember you proposing a solution to that. And then also, you're telling me because I don't have solutions to climate change that I don't want to talk about what you could do. What is your proposed solution to climate change, Vosh?
Well, I've talked about it with you. I think that implementing
is it?
worker co-ops would be a huge.
You
step
have zero
towards-
evidence that any of that would work in any way,
Well,
size, shape, or form.
wait,
I'm
hold
giving
on.
you- hold on,
Wait.
no,
Why are
hold
you
on,
shouting
hold on.
over me?
I'm not okay.
Okay.
I'm giving you contrary evidence that unions stand in the way of a lot of environmentally friendly things.
I acknowledge that.
And I've demonstrated that just by having a co-op, even on a logical deductive level, doesn't mean that you would be opposed to things that might hurt the environment.
Yes,
It doesn't make sense.
However, large, broad-spanning policies that overall serve to the disinterest of the working class to the benefit of the ruling class would be broken apart by a dissolution of the class divide between bourgeois
You're not
and
talking
proletariat.
about policy anymore. You're
Wait,
talking
wait,
about
yeah.
theoretical utopia.
Wait. Nothing I just said is utopia. I'm not a utopian by any
Breaking
sense.
apart the class policies to unite the working class, the proletariat.
Wait. This is not utopian. This is just political theory. Yeah,
Okay,
not
let's
all
talk
things
policy
can
then.
be
What
solved.
policies are you talking about?
Well, I said worker co-ops. But you can't.
Worker co-ops
you
is
do.
how you're going to solve global warming. That's your policy.
No, that's certainly a part of it, though. You do realize, though, that sometimes you have to justify policy through political theory, right? Political theory is the bedrock of proposing solutions to the way the system works today. Without political theory, we are lost when it comes to.
Where did we? I don't need you to proselytize.
Is it really proselytizing? Like more than 7 seconds?
I don't need the speeches. Like you can do that on your stream.
It's
what
it's not a speech. It's important.
What did we say about co-ops? It's not important. It's not relevant at all to this conversation. Obviously, I know that a broad political theory is going to be necessary to enact or to have a framework within which you want to enact any particular policy. That's common sense, brain dead shit, of course. So, what did we talk about regarding co-ops? What did I say? Do you remember?
I don't think we got to talk about it very much.
I literally told you I'm okay. I've said this several times to you.
You're okay with it,
I'm
yeah.
fine with banks. No, more than that. I said I'm fine with banks giving highly preferential loans to co-ops to see if getting them off the ground is a way to move forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think we talked about how opening up the ability for states to do individual trial runs for like a broader range of policies would be a good way.
We did.
That was a policy discussion that we had. I thought it was pretty fruitful.
It was barely policy, but sure. But then why would you say that I'm not proposing any solutions to any of these things if you and me are literally both in agreement on the policy level here?
Oh, that's one policy. I was talking
what other
about
policies do you have?
Well, I said the specific comment I made was with regards to global climate change and with regards to manufacturing consent. Those were the two main things I said he doesn't have solutions to.
So I have really big proposals regarding climate change. Most of them you oppose. So I'm curious, what are your big ways to deal with climate change besides everybody becomes a co-op, which is meaningless?
Well, I don't know how it's meaningless exactly.
It's meaningless because you're not going to make every business a co-op anytime soon. There's no path forward to that, and you can't even begin to propose legislation to get you there. So this is not a real suggestion.
Well, wait. So you think that suggestions are only legitimate if they're proposed within the grounds of electability? Like only if you could get them passed through current Congress? If that's the case, then pretty much nothing's going to be viable with McConnell and the Senate the way it is.
Okay, so then can I just hear you say that every idea that you have is completely and totally electorally unviable?
Right now, almost everything that had to be passed through Congress would be completely electorally unviable. Does that mean we shouldn't have conversations?
Okay, so then you're not talking policy then. You don't have like a policy proposal.
Wait. So do you genuinely believe there's no point in talking about any political changes that couldn't take place in our current McConnell-run Senate? You realize you're limiting viable discourse to the most useless, restrictive congressional system we've had in the history of this country. We have to be able to work outside of these grounds because right now there's nothing that can be done within them.
If you want to pass legislation through Congress and you want to actually fix problems that are impacting people today that don't impact either of us because we both make hundreds of thousands of dollars off of YouTube, we're in the same boat now doing that.
Why are you accusing me of not being considerate to the needs of the proletariat?
You brought up how much money I made, and for some reason you thought my net worth was relevant to the
argument. Why do you keep bringing up white
college
college kids if you don't think identity characteristics are relevant to people's opinions?
Because overwhelmingly, the type of people that talk about meaningless cultural issues
love to see
on
data
Twitter
on
are
that.
white college. What?
I would love to see data on that, because in my experience, many of the revolutionary vanguard movements inside of this country have been people of color based. And usually quite poor as well. The Black Panther Party wanted to burn it all down quite a fucking bit more than Bernie supporters did. And they were not the whitest college aged-ist group, you know?
Yeah, give me 2 minutes and I can try to find it for you. There was a big article about how there is a massive overrepresentation of white men on Twitter that are college educated that support Bernie Sanders.
Well, that's not quite the same. I would agree with that. I mean, wouldn't white men be disproportionately represented? That was literally the argument that I just gave you, that people on Twitter are massively white, college educated, and privileged when they come on and they argue and they champion the fuck out of Bernie Sanders. So you're against accelerationist rhetoric when it comes to burning the system.
Wait, why are we pivoting away from the
I'm not. Wait, I'm asking. Wait. No, this is very relevant. I promise you.
You're against it. I wanted to talk about policy. We're going back to utopia. Let's talk about policy in terms of climate change.
What utopian argument did I just make?
You're telling me that you just want to talk about solutions that are completely and totally politically unviable.
Right now, almost any solution. Right now, almost any solution is politically unviable.
How about bringing back multilateral trade agreements to the table? These are the ones.
McConnell would sit in on the table. He wouldn't have a vote on it.
So Republicans are opposed to things like NAFTA and the TPP and everything now? The Republicans would be completely not okay with any type of
this is yes or no. Do you think there's value in discussing things that you don't believe McConnell would be willing to have a vote held on?
I think that you can get votes on stuff like trade policy.
Maybe a few things. Yeah, he doesn't shelf every bill, but most stuff, hundreds of bills been sitting on his desk. Most stuff is not currently viable. However, I do think a really big part of political discourse is not just the literal physical legislation that you put through, but the broader ideological pushes you make to legitimize certain types of bills. That's how we got.
There are levels of discourse that we can have, though. We can have a conversation about, well, what's possible under a McConnell Senate? Not very much. We could have a conversation about, well, what's more possible if we flip the Senate? That's a conversation that we can have. Those are the conversations I'm interested in. The conversation of, well, what if we eradicate the class structure and make every single business co-op? Not interested in that. It's fantastical, delusional bullshit. That's
wait. Why do you insist on making these ridiculous arguments? I've never said that everything that I propose has to be done in the context of a worker socialist society. And what's more, it's not utopian.
I have no proposals just because McConnell won't pass things in the Senate.
Because I was specifically talking about global climate change and manufacturing.
But I talked about global climate change. What are your policy positions on global climate change?
I don't think right now there are any policy positions that are viable within our current government that could do anything to prevent the catastrophe to come.
Even if we flip the Senate?
Even if we flip the Senate, I don't, because anything severe enough to actually make positive change would do a ridiculous decrease in the productivity of our industry. So you
have no policy suggestions. Why would you accuse me of that? Well, you're literally the one here saying you don't have any policy suggestions.
I don't think solutions need to only be policy based. I think that broader ideological movements can also be a great way of changing the way countries function.
Which broader ideological movement is going to help us with climate change?
Well, a populist socialist movement would probably lead towards a great deal of class antagonism that might manifest in some way in the ability to electorally restrict some of these businesses. That happened back at the turn of the century, back in the 1900s, 2000s.
Oh, sorry. Oh, fuck. I fell asleep. I'm sorry.
Why are you
about wait. Utopia?
What? No. I was talking about something that's happened time and time again in this country before, which is just socialist sentiment increasing a populist uprising against robber barons. Why are you acting in such bad faith? This is legitimately disappointing.
You're literally telling me because you have a dumbass clip out here saying no. Because you're literally saying you're doing this weird fucking thing where you're reaching to this MLK quote to try to compare me to a white moderate and then saying, well, it's not racialized. You're trying to bring up the level of wealth I have like it's influencing my argument.
Wait, but you bring up the white.
Make this argument, and then I'm not bringing that up to you. I don't. I bring it up in general when I talk about there's a big problem with the over.
Oh, well, I didn't bring it up directly to you either. I brought it up when you were here.
You literally directly brought up my net worth.
You brought up the race of the people that you have ideological predispositions against.
Do you understand that when I'm having a conversation with you, I'm not bringing this up, but when you're having a conversation with me, you are bringing this up. I don't throw the white whatever bullshit liberal at you. You are throwing my net worth at me.
I didn't. I just said it on stream. You said the white thing on stream. Directly to you.
I did not say that Vosh is just another white liberal whatever bullshit. You did say you brought up my net worth in some way to.
Is it just a personal thing then? Okay, so wait. I don't think it's a matter of being demeaned. I think it's just a fact that people's material circumstances influence how they tend to behave, whether that be race or wealth.
We're in the same class then, dog. So what does that say about your utopia or your ideas about your class struggle or whatever?
Well, it would mean that if I did end up making a tremendous amount of money, or more than I do currently, I would be a class traitor, certainly. But I'm not saying individuals can only act in accordance with behavior prescribed by their, condition.
This is such a weaselly argument.
Wait. Okay. I'm not trying to be like bad faith or antagonistic. As I see it, we both believe, generally speaking, that people's behavior can be influenced by their conditional circumstances.
This is so weaselly right now. Holy shit.
I don't understand. I genuinely don't. Can you explain to me? I don't understand.
Tell me what you don't agree with. When you bring up out of nowhere, totally unprovoked, my net worth, your goal there is to poison the well, to make it so that everything I say is tainted with my class. Like it's somehow an argument against what I'm saying. Do you deny that that's what you're doing?
That your behavior is possibly tainted by your class. Absolutely, yeah. I think you do the same thing when you make the white class reductionist, LARPy, white boy socialist who just wants to burn it all down. I feel as though you're poisoning the well in a similar way. I just think that my well poisoning in this case is more materially defensible than yours. But if it bothers you, I won't make that argument.
Can you show me a single argument I've made that's like because of my class?
Well, it doesn't work that way. I couldn't show you an argument a person made because they're white either. People like Candace Owens exist.
So, for instance, when I argue with a socialist and they say things like Democrats stand for meaningless cultural changes instead of important class changes, that sounds to me like white straight privilege, because things like gay marriage, things like abortion, things like what's going on at the border don't impact you. Things like DACA, you don't care about these things. So that's an example of me pointing out how, hey, it feels like your position here, your privileged position here is having a negative impact on your ability to see through these arguments.
No, yeah,
when you try
to
throw my net worth at me, I never make an argument. I want to keep my wealth. I've consistently come out in favor of higher taxes. I've consistently come out saying things like, I don't think free healthcare or free schooling should be given to like my kid. It doesn't make sense. I've consistently always been against the interests of my class when it comes to things like tax policy. Okay. In fact, if anything, I would be more motivated to say things like everything should be a co-op, because guess what? I don't actually run a business like that anyway. So like, if anything, I could go even further into saying that.
So a few things there. For one, it's absolutely possible for people's arguments to be influenced by their privilege, but all of the privileged white boy arguments that you could find on Twitter, I've heard black people say as well. Your class position and your racial position and what have you can influence your perspectives, but it's not like a one-to-one determining factor. There's undeniably, you're absolutely a class progressive in some respects. I'm not saying that you're you go on stream and you're like, ha, because I made 300,000 last year, I will now oppose this tax bill. I'm not saying that. I do think it's something that broadly influences your politics as it influences mine. Again, I didn't think this would be a huge. Again, I won't make the argument that your class position is influenced by your wealth again in the future, but I would humbly request you stop mischaracterizing everyone online who's revolutionary as like a white boy college kid. I just don't think that's accurate historically or contemporarily. And even if it was accurate, it's not an argument.
Historically, there is no Twitter usage. The Black Panthers didn't have a Facebook group. I don't know why I don't know if you're just throwing in words to make the argument sound more
historically, as in historically, where we can see most leftist action take place in this country, because the left has been dead for the past 20 years or longer, we can see that this is not something exclusive to college-age white people.
I never said that Bernie Sanders support or that leftism or that socialism was exclusive to that. You're mischaracterizing my argument.
Then could you please recharacterize it?
Sure. I've said it multiple times in this conversation. What I've said is that the online left on Twitter are massively overrepresented when it comes to wealth, when it comes to education, when it comes to sexuality, and when it comes to race. That's the argument that I've made. But almost every single time I've said that, in even on my stream, I usually qualify it afterwards and I say, I know that like in real life, Bernie Sanders' demographic of supporters is far different than this. But online, these are the problems that exist. Everybody acknowledges this. Even BreadTube has made threads, and other BreadTubers have talked about how overwhelmingly white, college-educated, straight, and wealthy the online YouTube commentators are. All of the big ones, Sean and Jen, H Bomber Guy, Philosophy Tube, like all of these guys are generally white, straight men.
But usually for different reasons, though. Usually that conversation takes place in the context of minorities not being included in discourse, whereas in yours, you seem to just be dismissing them because they're white college-age
students? So I gave you an example of how you are dismissing my arguments without any reason. Wait. By giving me an authority. When you just asked me, well, I've never seen how I could dismiss someone's argument just because they're white or how that relates to it. I gave you a specific example of a very particular statement that I've been given multiple times and how I think that a person's class can influence, or not class, but how they're like, I guess IDPOL can influence that. So you can't tell me, well, you're just saying it for no reason without giving. I gave you a very particular.
Do you not think there's a relationship between people's income and their political tendencies?
There could be.
There is. Absolutely is. Didn't the wealthy vote predominantly go to Trump back in 2016? I'm pretty sure there are strong tendencies there. So maybe I'm saying, hey, maybe your wealth has made you a little less willing to consider the more theory-based, revolutionary, populist perspectives.
Okay, then I'll say maybe your wealth has made you a little bit less willing to consider the pragmatic realities that working class people face today. And maybe you should be a little bit more willing to talk about things that actually matter, like bills passing through Congress or children dying in cages on the border, rather than just...
But
okay, cool.
Why do you mischaracterize?
I'm not mischaracterizing you.
But you act as though, and you've said multiple times in this convo that I just dream of a socialist utopia.
Because when I asked you for policy positions related to climate change, you told me that the only way to do it is to like abolish class.
No. I said that would be a way of helping, and I don't believe that within the...
I asked you specific... Hold on, you're trying to rewrite the record live. I asked you specifically, I said, if we flipped the Senate, is there anything that Congress could do to help climate change? And you said no.
No, I said I don't think there's anything they could do without anything that they could do to prevent widespread climate devastation. There are things that they could do. I'm sure some of those things would be helpful, but in terms of real substantive change, it would require them confronting their class interests, which I don't think is going to happen.
Okay, so you semantically, you said
why are you so interested in accusing me of using verbal trickery? I'm trying my best to answer your questions honestly.
Because you're essentially just restated what I said.
Do you have any idea? Okay, what do you think? Do you have any idea how severe a policy would have to be for it to, at this point in time, really turn back climate change? I mean, actually do something about it. Not prevent,
but I know the vehicle through which it happens, and the vehicle through which it happens is through multilateral trade policies. There is no other reasonable discourse.
I've argued that. I've said that I disagree with the destruction of the TPP and NAFTA because it was the only way for us to economically leverage our power over countries like China, who are a huge influencer in global climate change.
Wow, cool. So it sounds like we agree on the policy points. Why would you say I have no solutions?
Because it's not a solution. It's not politically viable for us to reenact the TPP and NAFTA, is it? Not with McConnell in the Senate.
What do you think is more likely, getting a multilateral trade agreement passed or having the entire class structure of the United States dramatically
At what threshold of likeliness is it no longer relevant to talk about political solutions?
I think that if
find the exact line for me, if you would. And why exactly do you think that you have the right to tell people?
I don't know where the exact line is, but I know that there is a massive difference between the entire class structure of the United States being reshaped versus passing multilateral trade agreements.
It's a good thing I advocate for both. You can't
acknowledge that. Sure, you can advocate for both if you want, but just because you have a more fantastic and grandiose fucking vision for, 150 years.
I have short-term goals and long-term goals.
But that doesn't mean you can look to people that are looking at pragmatic policy and go, oh, well, this guy doesn't care about anything. He doesn't have any solutions proposed to these grand problems.
We had a conversation in person about this just a few days ago, and I think on the subject of climate change, you acknowledged that the free market probably wasn't going to find a solution. You threw your hands up in the air.
What kind of a pivot was that? What do multilateral trade agreements have to do with the free market?
Because
why would you think I would expect that the free market would solve climate change?
Well, I mean, the TPP would be a mechanism through which the free market would allow us to leverage.
Wait, hold on. This is absolutely not true. The TPP would be a way by which we can enforce government regulation, which is anti-free market, onto other countries that enact these trade agreements with us. The whole point of the TPP is to use your economy and then your government regulation and enforce other countries to follow. It's the opposite of the free market.
Yeah, but it functions through a market system, does it not? I mean, it's only through the interaction between the multinational corporations that we're able to facilitate this kind of trade leverage.
Social security payments function through a market system. That doesn't mean that all of it is free market. That's such a disingenuous way to state that.
Then my apology. Wait. You are really interested in painting me as acting in bad faith. Let me rephrase that.
Because you are, absolutely.
Not free market then. Fine.
Okay, you can say market, but there's nothing wrong with saying we need like a market-ish
I never said it's wrong. I said that when we were talking in person, a chatter or some donator asked about our respective beliefs on what could be done to solve climate change. You didn't seem to have a particularly strong solution. At this point, I don't think anything can really be done to stop the coming change because even revolutionary solutions take time to implement and they're, not particularly likely to bring about. But What does bother me is that people have been pushing we just need the multilateral trade agreements, we just need the carbon taxes, what have you. This has been going on for decades now, and not only has it really failed to substantively change anything, it's misled people into believing that pithy milquetoast policy decisions can change what is essentially a climate apocalypse.
But that's not true. If you've lived in places like LA, you've seen a dramatic curve of pollution over the past 20 or 30 years. This place used to look like Beijing. Like there used to be smog alerts and shit in California because you couldn't go outside because the air was so fucked in places like LA.
I didn't say it did nothing. Just compared to the climate apocalypse that it is failing to prevent, I feel as though its changes
you know what?
are.
It's done a hell of a lot more than any socialist country sure as fuck has in terms of producing any results relating to climate change.
What socialist countries do you want to talk about?
Well, we can talk about the USSR. We can talk about China.
The US. I don't think climate. Okay, I'm not defending the USSR. I don't think that climate discourse broadly was something that was that on the table when it comes to implementation back during the days of the USSR.
No, but like the hunting certain animals into extinction, having massive ecological.
What is this? Now this feels like a pivot to me because I don't particularly.
How is it a pivot? You're the one that just brought up.
No, I didn't. You did. And I don't care for the USSR. And also the USSR broke up 30 years ago. Yeah, you did, friend. What I care about is bringing about positive change.
Wait. You made the claim that capitalism or whatever isn't addressing problems related to climate change. It is. Is it doing it fast enough? No, maybe it's not. But that doesn't mean that we can point to systems that have either dramatically failed in the past or have no even ability to exist at this moment in time and say those will do a better job.
Wait, again, I advocate for policy decisions that can make improvements within the system, and I also advocate for broader populist changes that I think can make changes faster. I have never been of the opinion that we should just wait in our hands until the revolution happens and then get working. I've advocated for people to do local electioneering. I've advocated for people to push for policies like the TPP. I've advocated for all of these things. I don't understand why I just don't think they're enough. I don't think that operating within the current frame of political feasibility is anywhere near enough to address these problems and others, and that it's important to have a broader, more revolutionary perspective. And if I may, this is exactly the same issue, I know, that Martin Luther King Jr. had to deal with, because many of the political movements during his time were very interested in the minuscule policy proposals about maybe alleviating this or that aspect of the Jim Crow laws or seeing an appropriation of wealth from here to here in very minor ways. But they rejected this, not wholesale, but said it wasn't enough. And they pushed as a populist movement for something more. And that is what I advocate for, simultaneously to work within the system, but to advocate for something better. I think this is an inarguable position.
Yeah, sure. The position sounds fine, but it's a far cry from saying that I have no solutions proposed for any of this, which is just demonstrably false.
Fine. No sufficient solutions. All right, a solution usually solves a problem.
In order for them to be sufficient, for them to be some fantastical restructuring of our entire society, that is correct. I don't have any of those solutions at this point in time because I usually don't waste my time fantasizing about them.
Well, a fantastical restructuring of our society was precisely what allowed us to solve many political problems back during the 18th century. I don't see why it's impossible for us to believe this could at least be on the table in the future.
Okay, well, I'll talk to you again in 25 years when we're still nowhere closer to socialism than we were 70 years ago when people thought that we were on the cusp of being there.
Wait, for one, you do realize that's not a response to what I said, and for two, you do realize I don't believe I'm going to see a socialist revolution in my lifetime. I said this to you in person.
You do realize that you've said this a million times to me. That's saying like, well, we went from feudalism to capitalism, so therefore anything else we could move to. That's not an argument either, right? You have to actually do the groundwork and demonstrate it succeeding. Capitalism and markets existed across many different types of feudal lands, whether it was farmers trading crops with each other, whether it was armorsmiths. There were tons of these different.
There have been socialist governments for centuries.
No, they're not that have worked successfully on any scale.
Wait,
no,
but those capitalist societies also invariably got crushed. There were a few successful experiments. I haven't read up on all of it, but
the difference was that market economies were tenacious enough that they survived through anybody trying to crush them or through any other.
No, they didn't. They survived. They survived when people who wanted the principles of the Enlightenment to dictate their government policy eventually grew powerful enough that they could overthrow the benefactors of the previous system. That's how power spreads, not through ideas succeeding in spite of adversity, but through power and people who are willing to kill to preserve them. And that's what
you don't think the royalty or the bourgeois or the previous upper class wasn't willing to defend their systems as well?
They did, and they they eventually lost.
It's a better form of organizing an economy
than feudalism. Wait. No, and because people who believed in it eventually succeeded in their beheadings and got ahead and took hold of the governments they needed to take hold of.
And socialists have tried as much in the past, and they failed over and over and over again. So it seems like it's probably not a really good way of organizing an economy that can't hold its own on the world market.
What specific policies economically do you think I propose that would be unsustainable in a future economy? Or are you just literally doing the Vuvuzela argument? You're literally doing the what about Venezuela argument.
No, I'm not. Every policy position that you've given me, I'm pretty confident you've copy-pasted them from my own previous YouTube videos. So obviously, I agree with all of your individual policy prescriptions. Most of them
are mine. That's a funny way of avoiding.
Firstly,
that's a funny way of acknowledging the fact that we agree on more than you're willing to admit.
No, you're the one that wouldn't admit that. I would never come out and say, "Oh, Vosh, he doesn't have solutions to anything." You said that about me.
I don't understand why you're so fixated.
With every single policy.
No. Because policy isn't the end of politics. Political theory encompasses everything, not just policy. Policy, what's electable, what's viable, is an incredibly tiny fragment of the broader political happenings in a country. To end at policy and to not address political theory, I'm sorry if it's boring for you, and if you're not interested in it, then fine.
You keep saying that I don't want to talk about political.
You've said you don't want to talk about it.
Choir so much.
Wait, you've said. Wait, am I mischaracterizing you?
Like so much of what you say is just like trying to score brownie points.
Wait, am I? Dude, you're the one who keeps accusing me of acting in bad faith.
I have never said that we should never I literally spent how much of my time talking about.
You pretended to fall asleep earlier when I just talked about a solution I had. You talked in the stream I was looking at about how you don't like talking about political theory.
My initial contention with you is you said that I have no proposed solutions.
No sufficient proposed solutions. Yeah, sufficient. My apologies.
No proposed solutions to these problems.
Well, okay, in my mind, a solution fixes a problem. So a sufficient solution would be one that fixes.
That has nothing to do with whether or not I think you could talk about political theory or not.
Then why?
If you want to talk about political theory, that's fine.
Then why do you keep insulting people for talking about political theory?
I'm not. I'm insulting you.
I just watched your stream segment. You were saying people who talk about it are brain dead ideologues who only care about the revolution, and you're bored of political theory and you only care about policy, and you pretended to snore earlier when I gave you a potential solution.
What I'm saying is that if you want to talk about political theory and then lambast everybody else that wants to talk about policy by saying, well, they're not proposing enough, that is a ridiculous dichotomy.
Anybody who cares only about policy or only about political theory is, as far as I'm concerned, a demagogue who doesn't actually care about affecting change. And I've said the same damn thing. I've said the same thing about all of the fucking dipshit tankies out there who do believe everything that you mischaracterize socialists as. These class reductionist fuckheads who don't care about electoralism and only want to sit on their asses until mommy and their chicken tendies will eventually carry them through to the revolution. I think both are important. You stick mostly to policy, important, good, great. But when you say stuff like political theory is dumb, political theory is larpy, political theory is boring, it does make me think as though you're leaving a lot of potential solutions on the table. And that does bother me.
When you're literally coming out and saying, oh, he has no proposals, because I usually ground most of my policy positions in pragmatic electoral reality, that's bullshit.
No, you have proposals, just not solutions.
Okay, well,
I mean, they address the
socialist revolt or whatever. I guess I don't.
It won't happen in my lifetime. I've said that multiple times.
We both know that. I know.
Why are you can't score points for? He just left the call. Why is he acting in such bad faith, dude? Holy shit! Jesus Christ! Oh, that's a YouTube clip-areno. What the fuck, dude? He's emotional because he feels attacked? Yeah, I guess. That's a pretty weak attack. Because I said he doesn't have. I mean, yeah. If your only solution to climate change is, so he was mad because I suggested his wealth might influence his opinions, which is a fact. People are affected by their material circumstances. And he's upset because he's upset because I felt he mischaracterized him. I'm not sure, dude. That was fucking wild. Holy shit. That was crazy.